Hey everyone, Tanner here from TrueTan Wrestling. I have the honor of talking to Darian Cruz, a three-time All-American from Lehigh and a national champion in 2017. He is also currently representing Puerto Rico for their national team in freestyle wrestling. It was a really awesome conversation, and this is clearly a longer video than usual, more of a podcast I guess you could say. And if you can believe, there was actually way more stuff we talked about that got cut out. So if you want to see the full video, please follow me on Patreon for that full interview. However, he said a ton of great things throughout. It was a really nice conversation. We talked a little freestyle with him going to Puerto Rico. We talked some high school wrestling, and of course, we talked some Lehigh wrestling. So if any of that stuff sounds interesting to you, first things first, stay around and watch the video, and then feel free to like and comment your thoughts, along with hitting that subscribe button. Now, let's roll the tape, ladies and gentlemen.
Yo, we got Pan Am's coming up.
Heck yeah, I was gonna get to that. Excited to watch you wrestle for sure. Is this your first event with Puerto Rico? Or have you done a couple other things with them?
Yeah, so I did one event so far. The first ranking series tournament was out in Turkey. I dropped my first round match, and that guy ended up losing in the semis. So repechages, just
Yeah.
the only way you wrestle back is if he wins. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, literally one match so far with Puerto Rico. But that was a good test the waters. First time competing overseas. Time change was about like 8 or 9 hours, so it was like pretty much complete opposite.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we Coach McCoy's got us doing some really cool things, and we're getting ready to starting the process of training, traveling, competing, So I think this one I'm definitely gonna be more ready for. We've been training, knowing that the USA guys are gonna be here, and assuming and hoping that Gilman was gonna be here. So he's definitely registered. I think the USA guys are out in Mexico. They got out Monday, so pretty much just training there, and we're flying out Wednesday or tomorrow morning, competing Sunday. Feel really good, feel real healthy. I'm excited to see these guys down to weight.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for you. I'm real excited to see it out there and wrestle. But that's really exciting to hear. How does Puerto Rico like select their team? Is it similar to us where you like win their trials and stuff like that?
Yeah. There's a process. Definitely gotta go through that process. So the transfer, and I could be wrong on some slight information, just because I know Coach McCoy at the LVWC handled it with the UWW along with Puerto Rico. But I know I had medaled for the U.S. at Pan Am's. I got a bronze medal, I think, in 1918. So I had to pay for basically my medal to be expunged or, ultimately transferred over. So there was a fine for that and then another fine for transferring over. But it was roughly around 15,000 altogether that, I was fortunate enough to have LVWC and Puerto Rico pay for
That's
half and
awesome.
half, just about. I know a couple other guys are looking to transfer over to other countries, and their prices are as steep as 100K. So no, I'm definitely fortunate. I got all four of my grandparents were born in Puerto Rico, so that was the easy part. I guess you only need one. They've been reaching out to me since I was in high school, kind of keep me on the radar, and then kind of being second, third string on USA for a while. I just figured for this last cycle, let's take my chances against the field, see those guys out there at the tournament. So yeah, Pan Am is going to be my first true test. Like I said, we've been training and competing, and I think I'm ready to give. Obviously, there's a bunch of competitors there, but I'm excited to give Gilman a full 6 minutes, and I'm ready. Been training for his pace and been wrestling some bigger guys. So no, I'm excited. Like I said, Pan Am's in Mexico this weekend, should be fun.
Heck yeah. No, I'm excited for that. It's cool to sort of hear that process because I mean, we hear so many things and about the transferring process. Like certain countries, it sounds like you can do whatever, like all those countries bordering
Oh yeah,
Russia,
oh yeah,
where
right.
where like the Michits and the Amins,
Mhm.
like they also need to have relatives with their transfers. But
Yeah,
I didn't know the if you got a medal, you needed to pay or get fined
yeah.
to take
It's
it
a little
over.
bit
That's really
more.
interesting.
I think it's cheaper if you didn't medal. So that was kind of the hiccup we ran into. And there's a time period, right? So I could have essentially competed in the Olympics of 2021 since you got pushed back a year, but my time frame just missed the cut. So
Okay.
I like had to kind of sit out that whole year, which I didn't really compete at the US Open or I took that year to pretty much
Okay.
decide to move over. So it's like it was better off that I took time off unattached. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that you kind of got to go through, but the process isn't too complicated. If It's pretty much as complicated as you make. We've been there a couple of times, and there was back to the original question. There was a trials process, nothing similar to nothing comparable to the U.S. I mean, I went out to Puerto Rico, made weight. Funny story, actually. And Sebastian Rivera said this happened to him a couple of times, because he had done it a year before me. But I went out there, made weight. We're wrestling this like little kind of gazebo thing. It's like weird wrestling outdoors. You know what I mean? It's literally like it's like an open, pretty much, like 2 mats. You know what I mean? Like I said, a little gazebo thing with the roof over it, open doors. You got bugs flying on you and stuff like that. It's fun, but it's cool. But yeah, no, I showed up, made weight, and the guy showed up like an hour or two after weigh-in, and he was the starter, and he was overweight. So I guess they were just trying to see if I was gonna show up, and I did. So he came late and was like, "All right, I'll go 61," because he doesn't want to wrestle the American. And Joey Silva,
Yeah, I saw that.
was at Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's at 61 as well. So we got a pretty solid team for Puerto Rico. I'll get to that later, but
Yeah, your first three is pretty loaded. I'm real excited for like the first three, and then isn't Ramos up a little bit too?
Yeah. Both of them are competing, but I think one of the brothers, I think Ethan. Yeah, I was just with Evan at Rutgers because we did a little training camp with Puerto Rico at Rutgers, which is just quick hour ride from Lehigh. And I think Ethan is the one that's opting out this year. I think he's got some family stuff. I think he had a second child and he's kind of doing his dad thing a little bit. So, but Evan is competing, and then we got another kid from at heavyweight who's a USA guy. Not a USA guy, but he wrestles like Cal State Bakersfield, I believe. We're pretty loaded. We got, of course, the older captain of the team, Gomez. So he's still competing. So yeah, we got a pretty solid team. But anyway, I show up and that guy shows up late and puts like just kind of hanging out, and I'm like, that's the guy I got to wrestle. I wonder if it's because he's just sitting on the bench, kind of just watching, hanging out, and then he puts his shoes on, warms up a little bit, and I guess he was gonna consider going 61 kilos because he didn't know that there's another American at 61. So he puts his shoes on, and then he realizes that Joey Silva's there. So he decides, literally just unleashes his shoes, takes them off, and sits in the corner of the gym. and the coach goes, "Yeah, he just doesn't want to wrestle you." And I'm like, "So what does that mean?" He's like, "Well, the spot's gonna be yours come the Pan American Championships, but he's like, he just doesn't want to wrestle you right now." I'm like, "Well, is there any way we can wrestle just? I don't care if he's over, like he's heavy, or if we."
Yeah, you're down there. You might as well wrestle.
Yeah. I'm like, I came all the way down here, made flat weight. Like, can we just let's scrap? It doesn't have to be a ref involved. Like, I mean, let's just wrestle. He just refuses. So it was a little it kind of sucked. But like I said, Sebastian and Good Ale were actually out there, and they were like, "Yeah, it happened to Sebastian the first year he came out too." Blah blah blah. But I have another teammate who trains here at LVWC, represents Ecuador. He's actually a 57 kilo guy as well, and he's going to be in my bracket Giuseppe? As well. And Giuseppe Reyes, yeah, he's a great kid. He wrestled the 3, I believe, at Wilkes.
Yeah, he was Wilkes. He was a little before I got to Baldwin Wallace. So I know him. Yeah,
I think he was an All-American. Great kid, Lehigh Valley kid.
Yeah, for sure.
He was like 8 years old and wrestled in District 11, and so he definitely can scrap. Great workout partner. He actually won a match out at the World Championship, so I think he's ranked somewhere like 15th in the world, which is awesome. Have a partner like that. So yeah, we're gonna be competing. But anyway, he was down there training with me, and I was like, you know what, Giuseppe, we might have to wrestle a match just out here. Like I said, he came just to train. But he was informing me that a lot of these other countries, we're not as organized. And I say we as in Puerto Rico now, but we're not as organized as the USA. I know a lot of people kind of sometimes bash the organization of USA Wrestling, and kind of harp on like they don't get paid enough, or we don't get paid for events, blah blah blah. USA or other countries like that, they get paid to be the starter until a certain day. So respectively, I understand why he didn't want to wrestle. While I was there, I was like, dude, why don't we just wrestle? It's not that big of a deal. But back in those more impoverished countries, because USA is land of the American dream. So
yeah,
those countries are just like, if they don't compete and lose that match, right, that wrestle off on the spot, even though the coaches said by Pan Ams you'll be the guy just because he didn't wrestle you, but they without having that actual wrestle off, they're allowed to continue their stipend for being on the team.
Oh, wow.
Right. So it's like, so that guy literally made it like a life decision. You know what I mean? We're so fortunate over here at USA that we're like, it's not even about really the stipend that we get from
Yeah.
USA Wrestling.
Mhm.
It's because we get, a lot of these guys get paid through RTCs anyway. But he was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna opt out, and he can have the spot later. Like, he was basically forfeiting the spot. But he's like, I'll continue to get paid to be the guy up until the American Championship. So I understand that. Like I said, Giuseppe Ray has been with Ecuador for the past 2 or 3 years, and he's had to jump through plenty of hoops. He's been out to Ecuador, and they literally shut the tournament down. They're like, you're not allowed to wrestle. And he's already out there in Ecuador. Like,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, he's been through pretty much hell and back afterwards. But no, that's the story. It's funny. Everybody was congratulating me and, hey, good job on making the Puerto Rico team. And after a while, I explained to, like, obviously all my close friends, and I'm like, yeah, dude, I didn't even get to wrestle any matches when all the way out there. But everybody's like congratulating. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. But I mean, that's part of the process. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, we've been to a couple of places to compete. I competed in a couple of candidate tournaments to get a couple of matches under my belt. Turkey, I competed in. We did a bunch of training camps with Penn RTC. That's another solid RTC right down the road here
definitely.
from Lehigh. Yeah, so I mean, just using our resources and training, and it's been a lot more easygoing just because I'm not competing with the USA guys for their spot on the United States team, so it's like, it's been a little bit more laid back and more of a training environment, which I'm very fortunate to be. I know I was talking right before the Olympics, actually. I posted a picture with Gilman out at the Olympic training camp out in Penn State, and that was kind of the time that we were finalizing the paperwork and getting USA's approval, because USA has to basically okay the release. And Coach Zadig was giving me a call, and USA guys were giving me a call, and that was a tough conversation, of course. You hate to see some of your athletes leave, but respectfully, they understood. But that was an awesome opportunity. They invited me to that training camp, knowing that I was going to continue to represent Puerto Rico from that point on. And again, we got some good work. I helped had a part in helping Gilman get ready for the Olympic Games, and being a body, just a resource for him, and he ended up doing pretty well out there. So like I said, it's been cool. It's been really interesting, and it's not that like I'm not a threat, but it's brutal getting through the USA.
Oh, brutal.
Chain, right? You got to wrestle everybody and their mom, and then you got to wrestle the final guy. Too. So you're wrestling a million matches. Same with Russia, but that's what makes those countries so dominant. You know what I mean? You don't really see a Puerto Rico or another country as dominant as them, just because they're not going through the rigorous, competitive field as they are. But on the flip side as well, and this is something that a lot of people may not understand, is that the pay is obviously way different. You know what I mean? There's a Living the Dream Foundation. I think that's what it's called, or some of that sort. And they pay for their athletes to win or to medal at the World Championships and Olympic Games. And Puerto Rico doesn't really have that kind of stipend set up per se, or not even that quantity. So it's you're obviously paying, or you're getting rewarded more for that rigorous gauntlet to get to the starting spot. But we have some things set up through the RTC and through Lehigh that'll basically compensate me medaling at the World Championships and Olympic Games. So either way, I'm excited just to get out there and see how I match up against the field.
Yeah, exactly.
At the end of the day, like, to be the best, you got to beat the best wherever you're at. So like I said, I like my odds out on the lights, right? When it's, I got to wrestle these top guys, Ugaev, Gilman, whoever it may be, Fake Speedo, if they end up being the starters come that time. I'd rather wrestle them for a medal, or, for the gold medal, or for the bronze medal. So I'd rather wrestle them out there. And, I like my odds in that manner. So, like I said, I'm excited.
Yeah, and I like your training, how it's, you said it's training camp, travel, and then start over. It's kind of back to like it's more of a season rather than just pushing everything to the summer, which kind of happens in USA.
That's how Coach McCoy, and it's more freestyle based. Coach McCoy came in, and I still do some great training with Coach Buxton. He's an incredible guy. LBWC decided to make a shift and move over to Coach McCoy, who's just incredible guy. He's very inspirational. Obviously, 2-time Olympian, world medalist. This close to have another world medal, Olympic medal. So he's got all the resources used on teams with, Coach Slay. So he's got that tight knit bond and connection with Penn RTC. And so, yeah, he's been in the game for a while. So it's just great having somebody very inspirational in that aspect. And he's like, you know what, let's focus all on freestyle. So because for the time being or prior, it was more of, and that's why I'm a volunteer assistant here at Lehigh.
Yeah.
It was more, we were more just focusing on training as opposed to freestyle training, right? It may seem maybe like comparing apples to apples, you got to do it every day. So we've been doing more freestyle oriented stuff. And Lehigh coaches here have been understanding when I have to travel and compete, they're like, absolutely go. Don't really, hold them back. So we've been getting in that, like you said, that rhythm of the season of training, traveling, competing, and then coming back and readjusting. Just like tournaments. So obviously it's not as many as a long season, like a long college season, as I'm sure you're aware of. But it's like a handful of tournaments, like 5 or 6 pretty much a year, which is, we don't get dual meets and stuff like that. So it's like it's good to get those under my belt and to get used to the time changes and making the weight and stuff like that. So
well, I'm glad we got to start out with talking about all the recent stuff. I'm sure we'll get back to it, but I kind of just want to rewind just a little bit. So for those people who don't know, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of District 11 guys who are going to be watching. Congrats on the Hall of Fame also, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, D11 it's been so great. It's been such a hotbed for wrestling for the longest time. And they actually had the list of all the past members, and it was just awesome seeing all those incredible guys: Coach Santoro, Brad Dillon, Bobby Weaver, Jordan Oliver. The list goes on and on of names, and
incredible.
I'm just honored to be a part of that fraternity. That you can't really buy your way into. That's the coolest thing, is like it's definitely earned, not given. So yeah, I mean, all the medals that you win and all the awards and plaques that you win are awesome, but just having your name etched in something that no one can ever take away from you, that's the stuff that I've been chasing for a while. And it's just gratifying knowing that, like I said, the physical hardware isn't what it's about. It's just knowing that you're going to be on the walls of Lehigh University, on the you're going to be in history with the District 11 Hall of Fame. So I was more than honored and excited for that.
You've wrestled for Bethlehem Catholic, then you wrestled Lehigh. You're a coach there now. What I mean, it's a hotbed for wrestling, but what makes you just call the Lehigh Valley home? You just have been there your whole life. Just what's so special about the Lehigh Valley District 11 area in your eyes?
I mean, there's plenty of things, and it's not even like I'm married to it or tied to it per se. Obviously,
exactly.
I grew up near here. It's just the community is just relentless. The love you get for anything. We've got alumni here at Lehigh that have never wrestled a day in their life. What I mean? They're willing to die or pay for you or support you in your dreams of competing on the mat. And that's unmatched. What I mean? And comparing it to these big schools like Iowa or Penn State, they've got a lot of history with wrestlers. The amount of wrestlers, right? Like the quantity of wrestlers, the quality of wrestlers that Lehigh produces through time. And we always give back to each other. You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the coolest things, is that our alumni, like I said, not all our alumni have wrestled, which is crazy, just because this is a sport that's so complicated in its own, and you've done it, so you understand it. But imagine trying to understand it and support it, and you've never stepped on a mat yourself.
It's a weird lens to look through.
Oh my gosh, right? Yeah. So that's just the Lehigh Valley in general. I got people stopping me at the gas station and stopping me at I got some pictures of me up in some restaurants, and the connections that I've made and the community that I've felt makes it just really hard to leave. You know what I mean? And it's not like I said, that I'm tied to it or married to it. It's that constant battle. It's like they don't, once they have something that they respect, love, and cherish, they're gonna make sure that they take care of it regardless. So it's like we're in an environment where it's impossible to lose. right? It's not, and it's not even results. I don't mean that like in a result based. I mean in life, I know for a fact after I'm done here, whether I continue to train here or train elsewhere to finish up, it doesn't matter. Lehigh community is like whatever you need, we got it. If you want to transition into the business world, transition into the real estate business, it's not going to matter. They're willing to support and give you the leg up, and you know what I mean. It's like I think the biggest thing is like they think of it as like investment, right? They invest a lot of their time, money, and effort into somebody's character, and I'm the type of person that gives back. And usually, successful people in Lehigh Valley are really big on giving back to the community as well. So it's just something that it's like it's just compounding constantly, and yeah, it's a hard place not to succeed, and it's a hard place not to feel the love and give love back. So I mean, that's the biggest example I can give for the love for the D11, and like I said, Bethlehem Catholic,
Yeah.
and
Awesome.
and Lehigh.
One thing I like asking people of your caliber. So when you were college decisions come around, you were a stud, 2-time state champ, 3-time medalist, right? Or 4-time, yeah, 3-time. Were there any other schools kind of in the hunt? I'm sure besides Lehigh.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious what your list was.
It's a funny story. I mean, to be like completely honest, I didn't know much about college wrestling, and I honestly believe if I did, I probably would have had a harder time deciding where to go. Like I said, Lehigh was in my backyard, and I honestly have never. So I lived on the north side of the bridge, and Lehigh's on the south side. And yeah, like I said, I didn't know much about college wrestling. My parents never wrestled in college. When we went to Becca, so growing up, me, my brother, and my cousin all wrestled on the same club pretty much. We all wrestled for District 11 schools. We all wrestled for like Whitehall or Catasauqua. And then once we got to the high school, we were like, oh crap, we can't, because we all lived. So me and my brother have same dad, different moms. So he lived with his mom, and I lived with our dad. And my cousin lived obviously with his parents. Like I said, we grew up wrestling for the same club, even though we lived elsewhere. When you're in youth or middle school, it's not that big of a deal, So it's just funny. I have my name on a bunch of the Whitehall walls. That's a District 11 school, Whitehall, and Catasauqua walls. Those are the two schools I wrestled for. And then when we got into high school, I was a year behind my brother and my cousin. We were like, my parents just got together. Like, where can we go to be on the same team again? You know what I mean? Like, there's no way we're not going to wrestle for each other or wrestle with each other. We've been doing it forever. So it's not even like, and this is kind of what just started the whole dynasty with Bethlehem Catholic. And I'll get back to the question, but so when we when we decided,
I love this story. Keep going.
Yeah. And it's not like we all lived relatively close to Bethlehem Catholic. Anyway, like I would have went to Catasauqua. My brother would have went to Freedom, which is the Bethlehem public school, Freedom and Liberty. And my cousin would have went to Whitehall, which is right now in town. So it's like a 15-minute drive to Becca. So either way, we're like, where can the boys go together? Let's go to this Catholic school. We'll all go to Bethlehem Catholic. So we get there, and obviously we made some noise growing up in Lehigh Valley. You know what I mean? I wrestled, like I said, Ethan Lezak a bunch of the times in the youth and stuff like that, winning youth titles and stuff like that. But we ended up going to Bethlehem Catholic, and that kind of created a little buzz. So once we decided we were going, then Freedom's head coach, Jeff Karam, and he's been there ever since, and the rest is pretty much history. We got there, and maybe one other kid from Freedom, Jaden Rice, who ended up wrestling, I think, Division III. He went to Buffalo at first, and he went to NYU. NYU Division II,
They're Division III.
Like
yeah, they're Division III.
Division III. Then I think he finished at Hunterton, but he ended up transferring over with Coach Karam, and from then, like I said, the rest is history. And then we ended up getting Zeke Moisey, who transferred from Northampton, and then, but like I said, we got hated on a whole bunch. A lot of people were like, "You guys are recruiting," and it all started with me, Richie, and Randy. me, Richie, and Randy just wanted to be on the same team, right? We've grown up on the same team, so we're like, let's go to the Catholic school. And then again, buzz started, and we got a couple of the kids to transfer over. And it's not that we did anything. We didn't talk to anybody. They just saw, hey, the Cruisers are going here. Maybe I should go on that team. And from that point on, we ended up winning state titles and having great seasons. But like I said, we never really had those upper guys going to college. One of my biggest role models was Jordan Oliver, right? And I just knew he went to Oklahoma State. I watched my first NCAA tournament the year he lost to Stieber.
Oh
I watched it
yeah.
on TV, and I was watching that. I was like, man, I can't believe Jordan Oliver. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know much about college wrestling.
Yeah.
And then the next year was in Philly, and that was the first NCAA tournament. It was in 2011, first time um, I saw it live because it was right there in Philly. So I watched Jordan win, and I watched Zach Ray win at heavyweight. He was a Lehigh guy. So, and again, it's so crazy how it ended up happening. But
Yeah.
again, we never had older guys in the room going to big universities or going to big colleges. So I didn't know much. And like I said, Lehigh was in our backyard, but we weren't really focused on the college scene. So my brother took a couple of visits to like Penn, Princeton, and Lehigh. And I did as well. And I just tagged along, right? I was
Hmm.
too young to be recruited, but I just tagged along. And my brother ended up committing to Lehigh, and I wanted to do whatever my brother was doing. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to Lehigh. But as I started, being one or two in the country from like sophomore year on, either behind Tomasello or in front of Tomasello, we were back and forth. Um, but at that point is when I started to get the letters and stuff like that. And so I remember Okie State reached out to me, and I only knew Okie State from Jordan Oliver, so that was a big one. And you know what I mean? Like I said, I was
Yeah.
so naive, and I didn't take many visits. Lehigh, I only knew just because my brother had just committed, and he would get some summer training in when he was a senior going into freshman year of college. Now tag along with him, so I got to see it a little bit and get around the coaches, and I love those guys. And NC State, UNC, yeah. So I was getting letters from other schools, but those were the main schools that I was looking at, and but like I said, I knew nothing, so I was just like, "Yep, I'm probably gonna go to Lehigh because my brother's there." And I knew the coaches. The coaches had gone to this Coach Santor had gone to the same church as me, so I knew him from there, and I knew he was a great guy. And Randy was pretty much the only source that I knew, and he was like, "Yeah, no, these guys are legit. They're incredible people." And yeah, I mean, I remember Okie State. This is a crazy story. Okie State was bugging me a bunch. Hey, we're gonna come do a home visit. Do not commit to Lehigh. Don't commit to Lehigh. And yeah, so I mean, they're bugging me, and I'm like, okay, I won't. And I got Coach Guerrero calling me, Coach John Smith calling me, with all the Oklahoma accents, and it was so cool because like I said, I only knew Jordan Oliver, and I was like, man,
Yeah.
he went to Okie State, and look what he did. So I remember Coach Santoro. Obviously, Lehigh is more of an academic school and a little bit more
Hmm.
expensive. So I remember sitting down with my parents, and they were like, "Hey, consider this idea. If you're going to get a full ride to Lehigh, that's $250,000, you know, ride that you're getting to go to a really, academic wrestling rich history." And I didn't know much about the wrestling rich history, but
Yeah.
I knew enough. And they're like, just consider that. And Coach Santora called me, and um, he's like, hey, we just talked to compliance. And I wasn't the best scholar in high school, right? So I was like a big like wrestling head, and school second, right? And I recommend all the kids do it the other way
Yeah.
around. But so for me to be able to get into Lehigh, like compliance said, we got one guy we can in a class pretty much that we can kind of pull through regardless of grades per se. Not saying my grades were terrible; they were decent, but
Yeah.
I don't
Lehigh's
think they were
just a
good
little
enough to get.
tough. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's again, I'm not saying that I was a dummy, but I don't know if they were to the standards of Lehigh academically. So they said, hey, you guys. Coach Santoro said, hey, he called me and said, hey, we have one. Our compliance lady's retiring this year actually, and she said she'll give us one guy to pull us through, and we want to offer that to you. And I was just like, man, that's an awesome opportunity. I'm like, I called Coach Santor. He still reminds me randomly. He's like, you know what? I was at Dorney Park with my kids and family when you called me, and I was so excited. And I called him and said, because Coach Santor had talked to me previously, and he was like, hey, Tomasello is looking to come to Lehigh too, whether it's true or not. And that was like I said, that was one of the guys. That was one of the guys that it was me and him. We were 1 and 2 in the country, and
Yeah.
I wrestled him at Dapper Dan and all that kind of jazz. And so I was like, man, if I don't take this opportunity, Thomas Sell's going to take this opportunity. So I committed on the spot. And I remember John Smith was supposed to fly to my house a week after I committed, or a week after I got that information. And the hardest part of being recruited, I'm sure you understand, is like having to
Yeah.
call everybody and be like, hey, the letdown, right? And you're a young kid, and there's no easy way to do it. It's like super awkward, and you don't want to let anybody down. But I remember calling all the schools, NC State. Actually, I called UNC. NC State, I called the coach by the wrong name, and I was so embarrassed. And then he's like, "Actually, this is Coach Beasley." And I'm like, "Well, Coach Beasley, I got your name wrong, but I just want to let you know that I won't be attending the university." And then I called the Okie State guys, and they just refused. They just never answered me. Right?
What?
Yeah, they put the pieces together, and I called Smith, I called Guerrero a couple of times, and they never answered, and they never talked to me really since. And I remember while I was in college,
Huh.
on the college scene, I never lost to an Okie State guy, in season or postseason. And I just remember at the NCAA's, like the tournament, I would just get weird vibes from them. No disrespect to any of them at all. Obviously, they're great coaches. I've amended things with both of them. But I just remember at the NCAA tournament, they, like I said, I never lost an Okie State guy. So
Yeah.
I remember just seeing them, and they would just always give me looks. Like I never
Wow.
knew if it was like, I mean, I never knew if it was anything personal, but yeah, I'm pretty sure they might have been a little bit upset about that. But again, that's the game. So
Yeah,
again,
that's part of it.
I don't, yeah, what I mean? I'm sure they've had great recruits kind of opt out of the university. So again, I might be just taking things too personally, but I just remember there was just a weird vibe ever since I didn't let them come into my living room. But yeah, no, it was those were pretty much the big schools. It was Okie State, UNC, NC State, Lehigh. My reach or my grasp on college wrestling wasn't what it is now. You know what I mean? So I didn't really take a lot of my visits and take my opportunity to take my time and check everything out. I just kind of went with the opportunities that were given, and I knew the coaches were incredible people, and and one big thing was coaches here just care about you as a person, and you can see they're big on community and just making sure. What the most impressive thing here is Coach Santoro and Coach Dillon and even Zach. Zach was still competing at the time, but he was he was an incredible role model too. Just seeing him compete, and he was always number 2 and sometimes number 1 against Tervel. If Tervel, they would always have battles. So seeing the guy of his caliber just grind, and he was the last national champ, so I'd always be bugging him during workouts, after workouts. Hey, how can I get better? You know what I mean? Just you've done what you're trying to do. But one of the biggest things is that these guys care about you being a good person, you being a better person leaving Lehigh, right? You having a degree. We gave you a scholarship and you got hurt, 2 weeks in, we're gonna make sure you get your degree, keep your scholarship, and that's one thing that it's double-edged sword, right? You're losing the scholarship to give to a newer guy, but we just want to make sure that, and I say we now that I'm on staff, I see even more, but these guys want to make sure that you're bettering yourself, right? And in the meantime, you can get good at wrestling here, right? Because there's some incredible coaches and incredible
amazing
resources,
place.
right? And my freshman year was when the new facilities just got built, so we had a brand new facility, brand new weight room, brand new everything pretty much. So I mean, yeah, it was just everything's just kind of aligned. And like again, coming back to the question of all the schools on my radar, it's like I was so naive. I didn't really know much about college wrestling, but the universities that were after me were some awesome programs, and seeing them now, and I'm not sure if I would have thrived as much as I would have here, given the personality that I was coming in as a young kid. So like I said, you see all these stories of these great wrestlers going to the big universities and not panning out. And that's not always accredited to the kid, right? They're, like I said, they're young, so sometimes it's a little bit on the staff. And these guys worked with me through my lowest lows and were there at my highest highs. So yeah, man, it was just an exciting time. And I think at the end of the day, I just wanted to go where my brother was, and I just pulled the trigger.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I'm glad you started talking about your freshman year, because that kind of transitions into what I wanted to talk about next. But first, I just wanted to say, when you were talking about going to Becca, I love hearing it from like the source, because I can hear my dad literally going, "Oh, all they're doing is recruiting over there." And I was like, at the time, I mean, I'm so young, I was like, yeah, sure, I guess they are. Like, all the good kids are going there.
And we would get booed at tournaments and stuff like that.
I remember my freshman year at districts, I forget who, but like one of the Becca guys got hurt, and like needed injury
Mhm.
time, and like they booed him, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is brutal.
It was
They
brutal.
hate
Oh
they
my
hate
gosh.
Beckham in.
So we had some kids that would play into it, like Elliot Riddick and a couple other guys that loved
Yeah.
loved the crowd, right? So they would like kind of like Elliot would kind of like puff his chest out when they would start booing and stuff like that. But it's crazy how through all of that, the Cruises in general, me, my brother, my cousins, and even Zeke a little bit gave into it because he's just a crazy guy. But the biggest thing that kind of shined through was integrity and respect. And we always, the Cruises always respected our opponents, so we never really got the boos specifically, for us, but for the high school for sure. And I remember, like going back to your point, that you and your pops were making, we would get guys transferring the next year that we've never even talked to. You know what I mean? So it's like, and our my dad was on staff too, and my dad was pretty much just developing the kids in the room. He didn't have time to do any of this, recruiting that people were saying. And we got guys like, I know Hedish and Zane Heller, kids from like Northern Lehigh specifically, because I know they both got blocked a year for transferring. But we had guys like transfer over that, like I said, we never talked to, our coaches never talked to. Let's just they see the opportunity and they want to be part of something special or something great. And
Yeah, that's part of it.
we yes, you know
You
what I
want to
mean.
be
So
around talent, yeah.
yeah, right. So it's like all the hammers we had in that room were just making each other better, right? So
Yeah.
it's like I do see it from outside looking in, like, man, those guys are getting all the top guys in the recruiting. But we're recruiting in that aspect, requires you to reach out to somebody or, hey, do you want to come to Becca? We never did any of that type of stuff because, we didn't really have to. We didn't really care about that, right? So we let kind of the outside talk on whatever they needed to. And if guys wanted to come and practice, so I remember guys would be afraid to parents would be even afraid to send their guys. We had Weaver Elite out of Bethlehem Catholic.
Yeah.
Just a reason to get together and train over the summer. And Bobby Weaver would come in, and that was another huge influence on my life. But he would come in and run summer workouts pretty much. And guys, parents were afraid to send their kids just to the club just because of that back. And like, we don't want to get recruited. I'm like, we're not recruiting anybody. We're here to focus on getting better at wrestling.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the kid, like we would get guys to come to Becca that we never talked to, never, you know what I mean? And like, hey, I'm coming to Becca next year. I'm like, oh, awesome. We're excited, we're excited to have you, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And it kind of just compiled, and it continues to kind of be that way. And so, I mean, now I think they're doing a better job of making it look more appealing than just having people show up mid high school careers. I know kids are going to like the feeder Catholic schools, but the thing with Becca is like there's no Becca middle school, right? So they go to these little church dioceses, little like private middle schools, and they trickle into Bethlehem Catholic. But if you want to go to Becca, it's you just have to be in the radius of whatever it is. But yeah, no, it's funny. We've danced around this and we've had these conversations, and we just let people say whatever they need to. But yeah, from this source specifically, we never really reached out to anybody and we never needed anybody.
Yeah.
Not like in a cocky way, but we weren't focused on that kind of stuff. We were just focused on getting better, and realistically, the kids pretty much ran the room. Like we ran the room. We would just fight with each other every day in that room, and we made each other better. And Dad ran an awesome, technique, part of the room. And Karen was an incredible head figure. He gets booed a lot too. It was just incredible being that. Like it was rare that a Becca guy ever got most outstanding wrestler at District 11, and Karen would never get the District 11 Coach of the Year, except regionals. Sometimes our guys would, and states. Coach Karen would get Coach of the Year at states, and our guy might get. You know what I mean? It's just because G11 they were just so against the whole idea.
They definitely
and I
were.
get it for sure. I get it 100%. I remember there were still some Catasauqua and some Whitehall people so upset that they, quote unquote, they could have had the Cruises on their team and stuff like that. So no, I totally understand. But
it's crazy to think that you guys just got there because the brothers wanted to wrestle together. Like everyone else came, like no one else had to come. Well, so it's funny to hear how that story started.
We would have been there regardless if it was just us three on the team. It wasn't the plan like, oh, let's build something. We were just like, where can we all wrestle together? Like we've been wrestling together our whole lives. Where can we continue to do so?
For sure.
And
And then you were talking about Lehigh, and it's just cool. I like when small schools are just developing guys, because you do hear like the culture is just better. I didn't go to, I mean, I went to D3 school, not as big as Lehigh, obviously, but
sure.
like it's the same thing, like working on
Yeah.
education, making sure you're a
Mhm.
better person at the end of the day.
Mhm. Mhm.
So then when you were a freshman going in, one thing I remember just thinking is you went right out of the gate. And
Yeah.
nowadays, like there's true freshmen that just like there's a ton of true freshmen that just wrestle. But I remember
Yeah.
being like, wow, he's not redshirting. Like this dude's
Yeah.
a stud. So like, what was that first year like? Just
Yeah.
true
I mean,
freshman
it
wrestling.
was crazy. I got in a little bit of trouble off the mat right away. And like I said, coaches were just like, "You're being a knucklehead. Let's make sure you buckle down, and we're gonna work with you and stuff like that." But I remember I lost my first wrestle off as well, because some kid I never even knew, some kid from Ohio, and I just I'm like, "Who is this kid?" His name was Artem Timchenko. No disrespect to him at all, but he just kicked my butt.
Yeah.
I'm like, and he was a freshman as well, and so I wasn't planning on being the starter, but we didn't have any solid guys at 25. And I remember having that conversation with Coach Santoro, and he's like, I think you can be a starter, if you win the wrestle off and if you perform. So we ended up losing the first in house wrestle off to Artem, and I'm like, I'm terrible. And then we ended up having the brown versus white duel in front of we have a brown versus white wrestle off into public. So it was
Yeah.
it was in Grace Hall, right down right underneath the Crusoe complex right here, and I was so excited to wrestle. And I ended up winning that match in like overtime. And then we both go to the Clarion Open, and I ended up outplacing him at the Clarion Open. So I got the green light, but we constantly had wrestle offs, and so that kept me ready. But I remember I was so excited, but it never really dawned on me. Like maybe for a second, I was like, "Man, true freshman, am I ready?" But the coaches literally poured into me so much
That's awesome.
as a true freshman that they were just like, "You know what? You are ready. You're the best guy. I think you're ready to get on that podium." And what the crazy thing is I think I went 1-5 my first 5 dual meets. You know what I mean? Like my first dual meet here against Bucknell was my first like college match after the open, like my first college dual meet. And I was so excited that I went out there and I was winning like 6-0. Ended up blowing the lead to a kid named Paul Petrov.
Oh, that
He's
dude's a stud. Yeah.
yeah. He ends up training. He helps Michich train a bunch. He's real good childhood friends with Michich, so he's traveled and trained with Michich to this day still. But that was one of the kids I could not beat. And he ended up never being an All American or anything, but he just kept kicking my butt. And that was my first dual meet. Then I wrestled Nico Megaludis, who gave me my biggest butt whooping in college like ever. Like I've never gotten beat worse than Nico Megaludis. He teched me, and then I wrestled I wrestled Gilman, I think, and he beat me. And then I got my first win. Oh, then I wrestled a kid from Pitt, Zanetta, who was ranked
Oh
10th in
yeah.
the country. So Coach Santoro and the staff here, we always have incredible schedules, right? For being a small school, we wrestle a good Big Ten schedule,
Oh,
pretty
that's why
much.
I love watching Lehigh during
All
the
the
year,
top
man.
schools, yeah.
Great schedule
So I was
always.
battle tested. I didn't have any incredible wins. Like I said, I think I was 1-5. My first win came at home against a kid from Bloomsburg. It was a senior, and I was just a young pup freshman. I ended up winning in overtime, and I remember getting that first win. I'm like, all right, gotta win. So I was just so down on myself, but they kept pouring into me and like, you know what? It's not about the season. Like, let's get ready for postseason. So we head out to the NCAA tournament, and the draws come out, and I'm like, there's one guy I do not want to wrestle. Right? There's one guy to kick my ass
I
all
was
year.
thinking this that year. I couldn't believe you drew him, because I was like, man,
Yes.
he got teched by him twice, gets him first. I was like, that's just like,
Yes.
I was like, someone must
100%.
be
And
setting that up.
we were all like, I mean, nobody really said it, but we were all kind of on the same page. We were like, there's one guy we don't want to wrestle. He's not Megaludis. We look at the draws. We're like, first round. We're like, oh god, here we go. But right away the shift changed. Like, all right, let's prepare. Let's get ready for every match. We're gonna get ready for Megaludis. Our plan was to try him in a mixer, cement mixer, and pin him. Right. I mean, this guy kicked your butt. There's no real game plan. Because his pace was too high to try and hang on. And so I ended up, so the NCAA tournament starts. I ended up coming out hot, get the first takedown on him. Right, I go to cut him, and I go to hit a cement mixer, get stuck on my back, and end up giving up 6 points. He proceeds to tech me, right? So I dropped the first match, but from that match on, I just from growing up in the environment of, wrestling back and wrestling, especially having the season I was, but even going back to high school and being in those like, high pressure situations in the District 11 and, wrestling Beast of the East and, Iron Man, stuff like that. I just kind of got on my horse and kept grinding, and I got a win. I picked up like 3 wins against ranked opponents. I think the number 4 seed got upset. That his name was
it the Air Force?
Martinez
Yeah,
from Air Force, and he had gotten upset, I guess. So I ran into him, and ended up beating him, and I ended up beating a couple of guys that were ranked that year. And then it comes down to the blood round. I'm wrestling Terrell from American, who I've always had crazy matches with, and which is crazy because I didn't have any ranked wins all year, and ended up pulling 3 out at the NCAA's as a true freshman, and I ended up wrestling him right in overtime. My shoe blows out, my foot sticking out of my shoe. I got to tape the shoe up, and I ended up getting a reversal in overtime, and the rest is history. So it was just such a crazy thing. And once that happened, I knew, I was like, man, and the coaches knew this too. And this is the crazy thing, is they've always just believed that, I was something special, but they're like, you did that as a true freshman, like, man, there's no ceiling on you. Like the opportunities are limitless. So from that point on, I continued to grow. And then my sophomore year, I ended up losing to Schramm in a close one. And then I dropped that blood round match against a kid from Oklahoma who, Milhoff. I majored in season. Right? So oh my gosh. And it ended up being, he kind of just slowed the match down the entire time. And in overtime, I tried something, kind of unorthodox, because I knew he was kind of slowing the match down. He ended up getting a takedown. And I remember just looking in my corner like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I let this one slip away. But I guarantee if I don't lose that match and, don't become an All-American, I remember having conversations with my dad, and I was a mess. I was crying. I was like, beside myself. I remember my pops was telling me like, man, there's nothing, and I was upset myself. I was like, there's nothing I can do, right, to stop this feeling of like, I should have won. Like, it's a kid that you majored. So it's like, man, there's nothing I can do about this feeling or change the outcome for for 365 days. Right? I had to wait a whole year to do something about, or to change, this outcome. So literally from that day on, I put in my head, at the time, Thomas L, he was the top guy at my weight that following year.
Yeah.
So I trained all summer to be a national champ. I trained all season to be a national champ. And I had 2 losses to Soriano and Lehigh, actually. But I was so ready to be a national champ after having that loss against Milhoff, right? I put in my head at that moment, like, I remember being in the tunnels, just a mess. Like, I'm never going to let this happen again. It's crazy how stuff happens. And like I said, I don't know if I'm a national champ if I never take that loss. Maybe I'll give up being a 4-time All-American to be a national champ. I remember wrestling Lezak in the scuffle, and it was like mid-season kind of stuff, and I was like kind of being lazy, and I'm just like, man, for some reason I just don't want to be here. Right, just like the anti-champion mentality, and I was like, man, and anybody can be anybody. You know what I mean? That's what's so awesome about the sport. And I remember, like I said, just being lackadaisical, and I watched the match. I remember after I lost that match, there was one class I had on Mondays from 7 to 10 at night. And I sat in the back of that class. It was a very interesting class. It was the sociology of like mental illness and mental disorders. So it was a very interesting class. But I sat in the back of that classroom watching 2 matches pretty much every Monday. I would break them down. I watched my Soriano match against Penn State in the dual meet. And I watched that Lezak match. And I remember watching the Lezak match and being like, because I knew to win the national title, I'm not to avenge those losses. Yeah. I remember watching that Lezak match, and I'm like, man, and if you watch it to this day, I didn't do anything. I kind of just hung out on our feet. I picked down, he turned me. He picked top, he turned me, and that was the match. And I'm like, man, if I ever wrestle this lazy or like this lackadaisical again, he's gonna beat me, right? So I remember watching those 2 matches every Monday, just making sure, like, just kind of refreshing, like kind of opening that wound again. Like, dang, like if you do this, you're gonna, like, this leads to losses. So again, those are 2 matches that I watched, and so by the time NCAA's came around, it didn't matter who was in front of me. It just happened to be Lezak. I was ready to win that match. Like I said, I refused to step on that mat like lackadaisical and and not ready to go. So yeah, no, I think it was right after I got off the mat into the Blaze, they put a mic in my face and they were like, what was the next, what kind of flipped the switch for you in the season? And I was like, after that loss to Lehigh, I kind of put the pieces together. Like, man, if I don't wrestle, anybody can beat me. You know what I mean? Like if I kind of just stand out there, and if you watch, the NCAA finals match, there's no downtime at all. I know the plan. I know I have to get a takedown right in the first. So I know I'm gonna get 2 takedowns. I'm not gonna pick down so you can ride me. So, and that was the plan. I ended up getting a takedown in the first, and then the go ahead takedown at the end. So yeah, I mean, that was the second switch that, and I didn't lose. I didn't drop a match, after that. So it was pretty humbling understanding that moment, and that was like the big switch for me.
Like seeing how the draws played out and like re-looking at that season, I'm like, oh well, after that he beat Joey Dance. I'm like, that's always a contender. I was like, I think this dude can do something.
Yeah,
that was
a big turn, a big flip.
Yeah, I was like, all right, that's a good win. That's a huge win. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember before I was so nervous for that match. It was like the last big test before. He was ranked like I think 2 in the country at the time. Mm-hmm. I remember I was so nervous for that match, and one thing that Nate Brown, he was an All-American for us, national finalist, and he was one of the captains on our team. He had graduated, so he was kind of just an alumni coming back, and he gave me some cool advice. He's like, hey, I could tell you're really nervous. What's up? And I'm saying this, that, and the other. I'm nervous. Like, what if I lose? I don't want to embarrass myself. Blah blah blah. He's like, one, you're in your house, right? You can't let any of these people down. Like they'll love you regardless. Community is, we don't really care about that.
Oh yeah.
This is coming from someone who was just on the team and now he's an alumni, kind of in that space. Mm-hmm. And he says, and then he goes, not for nothing. You walk outside this building, Grace Hall, and you just stop a random student on the street. Yeah, he might know what's going on in the gym, right? Because we have like a big wrestling school. But if you ask him, hey, Darian Cruz versus Joey Dance, like, what are your thoughts on that? They're not gonna care. Like they're just, you know what I mean? So he's like,
that's actually a great perspective if you're nervous,
right? He's like, you're putting this giant in your head and making everything so crazy. But at the end of the day, like, it's just a wrestling match, man. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, your parents still love you, your girlfriend still love you, your coaches still love you. Like, just go out and do what you know how to do. And I remember him having that conversation, like, man, you're right. Like, if you ask a random guy on the street, hey, what's going on in this building? Like, I don't know. It just goes to show that, like, our world is like this big. So like, don't make it, don't make it that big.
One thing that I always wondered, just what was kind of the emotions after it? Cause you go from being a 7th place All-American to where that Friday you're wrestling all day.
Yeah.
To then being in a situation where you're like, oh, Friday night, you're like, we're in it. And then you're like, all Saturday you're out. So just what were the emotions of obviously winning that huge match over Gilman?
I mean,
and then
even leading up to that.
Yeah. And then the
lead up to that. I remember Lehigh dropped a couple of matches. My brother and a couple of guys dropped a quarterfinals match. We had a good amount of guys in the quarters, and we all dropped them. And I won that match. And that match was exciting just because it took the stress off of being an All-American, right? So once that stress was taken off, I was like, you know what? Let's climb this podium now, So after that, and after we had a team meeting, and I remember Coach Santoro was so upset. He's like, you guys, let these guys take your dreams away from you. He gave a good speech, and he's like, you gotta want it. You gotta take it. You can't let these guys take it from you. So, leading up to the semis, I was so excited and I was so nervous at the same time. And even if you watch the match, there's a point after the first stoppage where they're checking for locked hands. That whole first kind of half of the match, I wasn't doing much. I was doing enough to hang around. But after that stoppage in time, I remember going back to my corner when I had a second, and I was like, man, he's pretty strong, but I think, I think I can hang with him. I feel good. I feel ready. And the coaches were like, well, then go win the match. Like, you know what I mean? Like, come on, like, let's do this. And as soon as I get back to the center, I almost get, there's like 30 seconds, I almost get out, right? But from that point on, I was wrestling to win the match. I wasn't wrestling to hang out. So that kind of flipped the switch too. And I ended up getting that win. And emotionally, it was like, I was like, I'm here. Like this is something I've wanted for so long. And like I said, I just kind of thought back to that blood round the year before and all the work that I put in. And I trained every single day in the practice room, every live situation. You're down by a point, you're up by a point, 2-minute goes, 3-minute goes, 10-minute goes, like whatever it may be. I trained for that moment, right? So it's for all of it to come to fruition was just pure emotion and, pure euphoria. And it was the most exciting thing. So coming back to the hotel, everybody was really excited, but I was really excited too, obviously. But I wasn't finished. Like I said, I wanted to.
Yeah.
At that point, it was me and some guy that I grew up wrestling, and I had lost to actually. So I was just thinking, I do not want to. I want to be the one to bring back this trophy to Lehigh Valley. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like we're both Lehigh Valley kids, so it's like I was so excited to wrestle, and um, yeah, there wasn't like it didn't matter who was on the other side of that line at that time. I just don't think I was gonna be stopped. I was gonna be denied that title, and again, I was just electric. I was excited. I was in incredible shape, and it just the rest, like I said, the rest is history. So emotionally, it was just awesome knowing that I climbed those mountains that I fell off of more than anything. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So when I won, that was another big exciting thing for me is I get to bring the trophy back to Lehigh and to my buddies. And I remember there's a video of me coming back to the tunnel. My whole team is there, and we're jumping around like idiots. But it's just that's the type of stuff that like gets me going. Like I love making everybody happy, making community happy. So like I love taking my time off of the mat and enjoying myself with my friends and family and community. So there wasn't really a big freestyle oriented play. So yeah, no, we sat down with the coaches and like, is this something you want to pursue? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I mean, that year actually, the year I beat Gilman, he ended up taking a silver in the world.
Yeah.
He ended up losing in the finals, and they're like, man, you have you have the capabilities to do some incredible things. So we got right to work, and that following year we just transitioned right into it. And I think I can safely say that I'm finally understanding freestyle, and it's a different sport. Wrestling's wrestling, of course, but it's a different, like, there's little games you play on the edge, on the mat with the refs, in folk style, and I'm finally, well educated in those areas. So I feel really good, coming into this next cycle. And it took a little bit, but like I said, I'm excited to kind of put those on display.
For sure. And I like I said, I watched you all throughout college, so it was cool even from like a fan perspective to watch you kind of progress through freestyle. Like I know your first year you were pretty good, but then 2019 you were in the world team trials finals. So I'm just kind of curious what that going from like 2018 being good on the US scene and then all of a sudden be like, all right, I could get this spot.
Yeah.
I'm in it.
Yeah. And I just keep it's a constant progression. So again, it's another hump that I'm still managing to get over. And I have full faith that I will when the time is ready. And it's just that kind of that Gilman hump again.
Yeah.
And I've been there before, so I got to wrestle him 2 out of 3. And he's no slouch at all. And he's the best, he's the best in the world at the weight right now, and Olympic bronze medalist. And he had that match won in the Olympic first round. So also wrestling the other best guy in the world. So I think I'm right there. And just developing in that area just goes to show that it's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. So it's, and that's the mentality that I've been keeping. And I have full faith that when it comes down to it, when the time comes, I'm going to be ready. When I'm called upon, I'm going to step up to the plate. So again, it's all prep for the ultimate goal, and that's World Championships and Olympic Games. So again, it's just something that progression wise, it's something I'm still learning to this day. And I'm about to head to practice here in the next couple of minutes and just and get ready for the next
and then well, what's it like having being an All-American coach, like coaching someone to become an All-American, like you guys had Jordan Wood this year, and those are just some things I'm curious about.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's a different perspective. It makes me, it helps me training wise, helps me be coachable. Just because I understand a little bit more and seeing the work that these guys put in, I'm at the loss of what I'm looking for words wise. It's like, it's so selfless, right? These guys are so selfless. Like they'll put their body on the line just to make sure you got your needs met. And it's honestly, I think it's harder watching your kids lose than losing yourself, right? Because you can't you can only hold their hand for so long. I don't mean this. I mean this figuratively, right? You can only hold their hand, but as soon as you get to that circle, you can no longer help them, right? You can argue with the refs, you can do this, that, say whatever you need to, but they have, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it type thing,
Yeah.
So it's like, you just want to, it's not all about teaching technique and wrestling moves. I think it's mostly about making sure the kid understands how good he is and how good he can be. So, that aspect, correlating that to training, it's like, okay, so now that I know that, I want to make sure that, me personally, I know that I want to do everything I can to make sure I'm prepared and make sure I'm mentally, because, physically everyone at this level is, good enough to wrestle. It's the mental aspect that really separates the good from
Awesome.
the
And
great.
then last thing, just circling back to Pan Am's coming up and just training with for Puerto Rico. What is like this week coming up to competing sort of look like? Like what does practices look like and training
Yeah,
all in
absolutely.
general?
So the hay's in the barn pretty much. We've sharpened all the tools. We hit our heavy workouts at the end of last week, and gearing up. We're kind of tapering off. This last week is just maintain weight pretty much. I mean, for me, it's not that much of a weight cut. I mean, I only weigh like 131, 132. So, and it's gonna be hot in Mexico. So these next couple of workouts are just 30 minutes, feel good, get to your, your go-tos, your transitions, and a little bit of defense, and then 10 minutes sweat. And like I said, the hay's in the barn. From here on out, it's just the mental aspect. Keep telling yourself you're great, you're good to go, and keep relying on the training you've put in. So yeah, that's where we're at right now, and I'm more than excited to go out there and put it on display.
Heck yeah, I'm more excited to watch you wrestle and a bunch of other guys. So, but yeah, thank you for your time. That's everything. If you have anything to ask me, I'd love to hear it. But yeah, no, thank you, Darian Cruz. It's been awesome talking to you. Yeah, you had a lot of great stuff. This was way better than I ever could have imagined. So thank you.
Of course, man. Yeah.